In the last section, we covered the virtuous cycle and adaptive velocity and the science of the OODA loop as continuous adaptation. In this one, we're going to close with the ouch, our success, our weakness, and our failure, as well as the future. However, you can say the ouch, you can reduce the difference in group evolutionary strategies between civilizations to their use of the underclasses. Whether you exploit them, you limit them, you reduce them, or you sift in through them for merit, trying to elevate some of them, limiting the production of the rest, Europe. So yes, ouch, that one hurts because it's simple. It's not only just that we were environmentally selected, but that we were selected by our relationship between the aristocracy and the peasantry, whether they were kin or alien. For the Europeans to conquer and replace the earlier generations of Europeans, the steppe people to replace them, maintained the discipline of domesticating human animals, and this is what slave, serf, freeman, citizen, sovereign was. Just like you'd progress through the military or move through your age or work your way up a ladder, it was just moving people from domesticated animal to equal. Civilizational differences are how humans were demarcated from other domesticated animals, and it appears only the Chinese bureaucracy and the European market bureaucracy achieved it. The Chinese bureaucracy, professional bureaucracy, was actually better than the European kinship bureaucracy, and we didn't really get there until after Napoleon. But it was the Chinese. The Chinese were obviously better at it, but in both cases, we used market meritocracy to elevate a class. The Indians used the caste system because of the greater number of the underclass, which is why the Indian upper class it has such startling IQ numbers. And in the Middle East, particularly Islam, went the opposite direction of lionizing, creating a religious monopoly for the benefit of the underclass that they can't escape. I mean, priesthood is wonderful until you realize that it's a trap that imprisons people. So theocracy is the worst of all possible worlds. So the West, reliant on tech, professional warriors capable of taking initiative at performing a maneuver and willing to hold the formation, line, and attack, created an aristocratic egalitarianism, a world of markets, because it was necessary to create numbers of those capable of maintaining that strategy. In other words, we had to make more professional warriors of increasingly complex ability in order to maintain the democratic franchise. Once you see that, the Greeks make sense, the Romans make sense, and why we overexpand makes sense. We've known for centuries that professional warrior class, pushing initiative down as possible, maneuver, holding formation, has made a small population on the ends of the Bronze Age the most successful warriors in history, despite our relatively small numbers and our relatively small wealth, because we rely on initiative and heroism and meritocracy producing a culture of continuous innovation and adaptation. Our weakness is that there are only three means of human coercion: force, trade, and ostracization, and only three foundational institutions: state and command, law and commerce, religion and ostracization. Every civilization becomes anchored in its first institution: China and the state, India and culture, what we call an unorganized religion, the Middle East and organized religion, and the West and military and law. The weaker in the second institution and the weakest in the third is just the natural consequence of the evolution of any given hierarchy. This is an unavoidable law of all organizations. A rule of law society like the West will always lead to oligarchy, greater wealth, which will lead to a middle class, growth, and prosperity, with less ability to concentrate decision-making capital in the central government, except under war. In other words, it was very difficult for Europeans to create an imperial expansion like Rome because their tradition was one of limiting power. It was only possible for the Romans early on because there were no other equal powers that they could get at near them or contain them. And our failing is that markets train us to let them do their work. It creates an overconfidence, and markets are tolerant of competition. So we have this one weakness is tolerance, and in particular, tolerance for effeminate warfare. And the enemy has mastered the feminine method of warfare, undermining from within with false promise, gossip, ridicule, shaming, psychologizing, moralizing, and lies. So we spent 50,000 years domesticating male warfare to create the civilizations that we have. We made fathers and husbands responsible for regulating the female method of warfare of their wives and daughters. And we gave women the franchise and the enemy free speech without regulating the female method of warfare that is largely done through verbal means of undermining. And we can then now end female warfare and restore truth, merit, and reciprocity by ending this tolerance.
So this points at repressive tolerance. Huza, which is the enemy's spokesman, talks about repressive tolerance in a different way, because he's like, always, if it breaks to the left, you tolerate it, no matter what, including violence. If it breaks to the right, you never tolerate it by any means necessary. It's the flip side of the coin, which is Western civilization has to be repressively intolerant of those enemies that are seeking to undermine it, is what you're saying.
Correct. Because we're uniquely vulnerable to it. Because we have no, I mean, that's why kings are so important. That's why I'm so emphasis on monarchy. We need someone with a familial interest in preserving their status and privilege and their history, who will, without question, throw out the government, call out the military and the people, and make reforms happen if the legislature has failed, because all decision groups fail. There's malincentives in every political system, whether it's corporate, familial, business, corporation, industry-wide, finance, or government, because we always end up with malincentives. Each one may seem okay, the cumulative effect must be bad. Anyway, so I think I'm getting to the end here. So in the future, in a post-agrarian world, all nations are compatible, and all empires and all civilizations are incompatible. In explicitly nationalist China, Russia, Hungary, and India are natural resistance to two hostile movements: the spread of Islam that's destroyed every great civilization of the ancient world, and the spread of Jewish cosmopolitanism in the forms of Marxism, postmodernism, etc., that has destroyed much of the modern world and now spreads more softly using the combination of Jewish European liberalism and neoconservatism under this managed decline. So this is what the world's reacting to in the post-war era. Only Islam and Judaism are globalists. Everyone else is a nationalist. And I expect this framing to emerge over the next 20 years. It's the natural result of optimum adaptability in the technological age. It's also the only means of maintaining peace and prosperity within this age. So if you understand this, these 11 points explain the foundation of European civilization and our relation to others. Wow, that was 2 hours. I'm sorry.
No, this is good. It's good. It's like,
I'm only making the point here that we're returning to normal, which Huntington predicted, which is the conflict of civilizations and the relative economic and military power of those civilizations, that those civilizations roughly represent races, and that they have their own interests, and that we are more likely to be in a position where, once again, transport and trade needs policing by each individual state, which means that we need 5 times as much, 7 times as much military. We will have 5 to 7 times as much likelihood of conflict. So thank you very much. I'm Kurt Doolittle for the Proprietarian Institute of Natural Law. Thank you to Dr. Brad for your help in getting through this body of work. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and that I hope you're enjoying sticking with us through the journey.